Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. Today we're going to chat about the big rugby news of the week, discuss the top 14 broadcasting rights, and as always, we'll have a look at Tier 2 news and results and look ahead to the rugby coming up on TV this weekend. We'd also like to say a big hello to all our new subscribers and say a huge thank you for the great reaction we've had to our to last week's deep dive on Fiji. If this is your first video, you can come here every week to get the latest Rugby Tier 2 and broadcast news, as well as a closer look at a different topic each week. If you like the sound of that, please hit the like button and subscribe, and please share.
And if you want even more Pirate Rugby, follow us on Twitter to get updates on all the obscure games from across the globe, or head over to our Substack to get long-form written content as well to links to rugby highlights and more. So I'm just going to show the people our Substack because I think some people might not be aware of what it is. So shout me, mate, when you can see my screen. You should be able to see your own face briefly.
Yeah, it's coming up now. That's what I look like. Oh no.
Okay, can you see?
Still coming through. Bear with us, folks. We promise this will be worth it. There we go.
Okay, so this is Substack. So Substack is like a blog slash website. So it's where we post all of our content. We love it as a platform. So if you guys sign up here, all you do is put your email in. It's completely free. And then every bit of content that we drop, you will get to your inbox and you can read it just like this. I'll show you an email here. So this is what it looks like if it comes through to your email, and you just get it all as like a newsletter for yourselves, and you can see everything we put here. So what I'm showing you here is the database that we dropped on Samoa today, supporting our pod that we did with Kalen over on his channel. Shout out Kalen. We've got another one on Tonga that went up today. One of the other things that we do is for all of the Tier 2 international games, we collate all of the highlights on YouTube, put them all in one place, and then we send them out to all of our subscribers. So if you want to go a one-stop shop for all of your rugby Tier 2 highlights, which can be a bugger to find, come to us and we'll sort them out for you. You've also got Enda's TV guides, you've got episodes of the podcast, and then the Fiji deep dive that we did last week is all on there as well. So that's for you guys to go on. You can read it in your own time. It goes into a bit more detail. It's a bit more less, let's say, on the edge as the actual podcast itself is. And you can read it, share it with your mates, anybody who might like it, or refer back to it when you're in the pub and you need to impress people with how much you know about rugby. So that's that. So yeah, head on over there, guys. It's completely free and you won't regret it, I promise you. Okay, mate. So let's move on to our rugby moment of the week then. So what was your rugby moment of the week?
My rugby moment has to be the decision by World Rugby to appeal the Farrell decision. Like it's probably a predictable one for me. If anyone has been listening to me lately, we were all outraged, probably quite rightly, that it looked like Farrell wasn't going to be banned, and the red card was rescinded. But thankfully, and again, this is nothing, and we'll get onto it later. This is nothing against Farrell himself. This is just, for me, just a great decision by World Rugby to take a stand. And like, I think obviously the entire world for me is watching this space, and like judging by the reaction from not just the rugby space, but from major news outlets, like everybody who I know who knows anything, even a small bit about rugby, they brought this issue up and they couldn't believe it. And it's such a bad look because all these same people know the horrible stories about what some people in their early 40s or former players, what they're going through because of brain injuries that they picked up in rugby. So I think this was a really important decision by World Rugby to make the decision to appeal. And obviously we saw today that Farrell has been given a 4-match ban, which I think it's the right decision. It's if it does anything for me, it just sets the right tone now going forward, that if you do make these high hits, you will get a ban. And I think that's the right decision. So for me, that was great to see. And despite all the uproar, despite all of the controversy, we've come to a good decision now, I think. What about you? Yeah. Hopefully you have a bit more of an uplifting moment of the week, do you?
Yeah, so my more uplifting moment of the week, as I share my screen again, so all the people at home can be uplifted by it as well. Shout when you can see, mate. So we've been watching NPC every week now that it's on. And there was a hell of a game last week on Friday morning, I think it was, or it might have been Saturday morning, between Northland and, or it might have been North Harbour. Apologies, people, if I get whichever one it was, versus Tasman. And it was a fantastic win for the home team. But then the mascots just decided to come and creep on the guy doing the interview. So this chap here is trying his best to give a serious interview, and he does it deadpan all the way through. This is it a crocodile or a dragon, do we think? Not a crocodile.
It's both.
I reckon. It's both. Okay.
It's whatever you want it to be.
This mascot stood there like that for the whole interview for like 4 minutes. Just like he is in this guy's personal space. I think that tongue might be touching his shoulder. Fair play to you, man. He doesn't blink. He doesn't break a smile. Or the interviewer doesn't make it, doesn't flinch at all either. Just keeps on asking the questions. So what did you think of the driving mall, etc., with your little mascot here, giving thumbs up in the background and things. So, you know, the lighter side of things, I suppose. So yeah, that was my moment of the week.
Yeah, we'll take it. So I guess we have to move on to the big news of the week, and we have to start with the bans, I suppose, don't we? I know I've kind of touched on it there in my opening. What are your thoughts on Vunipola? He's obviously, you know, got a 3-game ban essentially, and it's gonna come down to 2, because I'm sure he'll attend tackle school.
Does tackle school not have a term then? So obviously, like, we call them terms in the UK. I don't know what they call them, semesters maybe elsewhere in the world. It's currently summer holidays in the UK, so surely tackle school is off, and he's got to wait for September to go and do it, or maybe not.
Yeah,
Maybe they organise a separate school for him. I don't know. Starts at 6 weeks, down to 3 because he's a nice guy, and then down to 2 for doing the school.
He's a good record as well. He's got a good disciplinary record.
He does have a good record as well. He does have a good record. It's not the kind of, you know, it's based on what we've seen from the rugby disciplinary process. It's correct. The process is what I would like to change more than this actual ban. Similarly for Farrell, so Farrell's 4-week ban is the same length as his previous ban, which he got last time. My understanding was that your ban should increase in length each time. Obviously, that hasn't happened, and they've also backdated it for a game that's in the past. So he only actually misses 3 games. To be honest, I don't really have the energy to quibble with that too much after the whole drama from last week. I think the important thing is that he got a ban. Like I say, I'd like to see the rugby disciplinary process completely overhauled, as I think we all would. So that's kind of where I am on it. What I want to ask you though, mate, is that towards the end of last week, we saw multiple pundits. So we saw all the BT pundits, Delalio, Ugo Monya, Austin Healy, and then over the weekend we've seen more people: Nigel Owens, Jonathan Davis. I think I've seen a couple of the written journalists as well come out and say, Jim Hamilton on the Rugby Pod as well, come out and say the fans are completely out of order with how they've reacted to this. The fans, the vitriol on social media has just been terrible. People need to think more about Owen Farrell and how this is making him feel. And it's out of order that people are getting so emotional about this topic. Is that they haven't played the game and they don't know what they're talking about. What is your reaction to seeing the pundits almost in a coordinated attempt to switch the narrative and make it all about the reaction of the fans?
I guess I can see where their angle here, but for me and my interaction on Twitter and from reading the news and from just interacting with people, I haven't seen many attacks on Farrell's character or anything like that. I think more people they were just shocked at the decision by the disciplinary committee. That's what people were outraged at, and people obviously have Steve Thompson in their heads when they read these articles, when they hear this news, because we all know that that's the ultimate reason why we want to see stronger punishments and why we want to take these high hits out of the game. So for me, like, that's why I thought there was such a strong reaction, but I didn't see these personal attacks on him at all. I don't really know where all this is coming from. Maybe there's like, there are rabbit holes you can go down on social media, but I didn't see that. People in my timeline like attacking him as a person. People were more like, the anger was towards the governing bodies and not towards Farrell for me. And like we've said it before when we've spoken about him, like he's a fantastic player. Like, I don't know the fella. Apparently he's a great lad. I've no doubt he is. And just I wouldn't say anything bad about him. No one that I interact with says anything bad about him. We would just criticize his tackling, and we would criticize more so the governing body for not taking stronger action. I don't know. What are your thoughts on? I was a bit taken aback by it. Yeah, I don't see many personal attacks on him.
I thought it took the pressure. Well, not took the pressure. I thought it felt like an attempt to take the pressure off the game. And it was, you have to remember that the guys in the media, their product is the game. So if the game is attacked, potentially their income is attacked. So they're always going to circle wagons. It's not just a rugby thing. We see it in the Formula One as well. Whenever the FIA misses up in the Formula One, all of the pundits and Sky and things always come to heel and protect the sport. So I guess it's not to be surprised about. I think I completely agree with you. When I saw Nigel Owens, who's someone I've got unlimited time and respect for, when I saw him tweet, rugby fans need to take the emotion out of this situation. And exactly what you said. How many videos, how many interviews have we seen with the likes of Steve Thompson, Ryan Jones, however many others, where their wives have become their carers when they're in their mid-40s because they've got early onset dementia? And we're shown these every other week. And it's the way to motivate us, the fans, to care about brain injuries and things. And then we get a high tackle happens and we get told stop being emotional about it. It just doesn't sit well with me, I'm afraid. Yeah, so that was kind of my take on it. I think I don't like it when media turns on fans. I think I agree with you. I think in all the fan-led content, podcasts and things that are out there, no one was really attacking Farrell as a person. No one said anything what he must be like in private or anything. It was all about his actions on the playing field and the process that had the responsibility to discipline him afterwards. So I'm completely aligned with you, mate.
That was it for me. It was the government authority. Like the fact that we got to that decision for me was just crazy. Farrell obviously caused the whole situation, but like I think rightly so, like that most of the anger was geared towards the governing bodies for me. And look, I think what I'd like to discuss more is just what do we do from here? Like, let's forget about it. Like, it happened. We are where we are. Concussion rates don't seem to be coming down. So for me, more needs to be done. And I think this was a perfect example as well of why something needs to be done, because it seems you can almost, I don't like to use the phrase, but you can almost get away with a high hit like that. Whereas if you're from, a tier 2 nation, you don't have a really good QC or whatnot, you won't get away with it. So I think like they've got a couple options. Like, a lot of people have been calling for a complete overhaul. That's one option. Another option is just, do what they're doing, which is nothing, and we'll see concussions, the concussion rates not reduced at all. Do we introduce some sort of mandatory minimum bans for red card offences like this? So we just take a zero tolerance approach. Maybe that's what we need to do to deter players. Do we need to ban upright tackles? Do we need to remove, the Les Kiss rugby league, maul tackle, where if you tackle someone high, you hold them up, and we all love to see it and it's great, but do we need to actually, is that something like a practical measure that we could introduce that will force players to tackle lower? Like, we're already forcing players to go lower in amateur rugby. Is it something obviously, but yeah, I don't know. There are so many options, but I think this case has clearly demonstrated that we need to do more. I don't know.
For what it's worth, I actually think that Billy Vunipola's tackle itself was worse than Farrell's, just because Billy's just seen a guy coming towards him and just took the arm and dropped the shoulder into him. I can't. The reaction that I've seen on that, Farrell's one obviously happened a lot faster, and I'm not saying that it is okay, but Billy's one was an tackle assist, and it wasn't even for a line break; it was just in general play. And the reaction I've seen online for that is just what was going through his head. Right, I can't see what he was trying to do on that one. So yeah, I think as a solitary incident, I think Vunipola's one was worse, but I think the context around Farrell's one just is what made that the bigger deal in people's minds.
Yeah, and look, we could talk about it all day, but I think, look, we've gotten to a good place now, I think, in terms of the decision. So for in both cases, maybe we're not happy with the length, but look, they've been banned, I think rightly so. So let's move on for now anyway. But on reflection, we all know that more needs to be done. But I think for the sake of our own sanity, and probably the listeners as well, people are kind of sick of talking about it at this stage. So what else happened the past couple of days in terms of big rugby news?
I don't know. Wales certainly didn't play any rugby over the weekend. Not that I saw anyway. So for those watching along on YouTube, I've got a Wales top on, but it's in black because I'm in mourning because I've watched my national side take 50 points at home again. So I think we've taken 50 at home 3 times in 3 years now. So yeah. I've got nothing really to say about this game, mate. I've done a couple of other pods about it. It was a scratch Wales team against the world champions. What can you say? I mean, from a neutral point of view, do you take anything from this game?
Nope. You just need to put it into perspective. It was not Wales' first team. South Africa were on fire. South Africa have had better preparation for these warm-up games and for the World Cup in general because they're just coming off the back of the Rugby Championship. So no, you don't need to read too much into it. And we all know that Wales are going to be highly motivated. They look really fit. I think Warren Gatland will have them in a good place for the World Cup, and they'll certainly perform better than that. But yeah, in terms of spectacle, nobody likes to see it. Well, I don't know about you, but nobody likes to see a one-sided game like that. I certainly don't. And yeah, you just need to add perspective. It wasn't Wales' first team. South Africa put out a very strong side. And yeah, we'll see better games. But yeah, not to read too much into it would be my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. So speaking of one-sided affairs then, tell me about England's visit to Dublin. How did that go?
Do you know what? I thought for the first half, I didn't think it was overly like Ireland were obviously, especially overall the better side and overall the better side in the first half as well. But I think England did, like, it was a better English performance. Like there were less handling errors. Their handling skills were a bit better in terms of passing, in terms of running lines. They did, like, there were an awful lot of kicks, but it didn't seem to be the same amounts as previous games. But it's still obviously their number one tactic. But for me, yeah, it reminded me of the Six Nations and England putting Ireland under pressure. And that's they slowed down. Like it was, like, we all know about the celebrations, and we've talked about it, how we all kind of get fed up of seeing some of these Saracens players react to to knock-ons like they've won a game or something. But it's a really good tactic for England. I think that's how you beat Ireland as well. You just slow down the ruck ball, and that it's a really effective way of beating Ireland, I think. But yeah, and Ireland's, I think any other day, like if Ireland had maybe another game or two under their belts, they would have definitely beaten them a lot handier, I think. But for me, Ireland were just a bit sloppy, just a bit off. You could tell that it was only their second warm up game of the World Cup warm up games, and I think that was it for me. That was the context. But we did still see a pretty strong Irish performance. Matt Hansen, what a baller! He's such a good player. He is going to be starting. I think in all the major games, shall we say, of the World Cup. You can tell that he's an X10, like that crossfield kick was magnificent. So yeah, and I thought Ross Byrne overall had a strong game. He wasn't maybe a stand-up, but he had a strong game, I think, which is important, because a lot of people quite rightly have been calling for Crowley to be the backup to Sexton. But I think, yeah, it was just another reminder that there is some competition there, and that Byrne he's not a bad player. He's a good player. Obviously his kicking was a little bit off, but
Yeah.
he's got a strong kicking game. He can do better than that. But I think it was just good to see him put in a decent performance to keep that pressure on and to keep that competitiveness being himself and Crowley. What did you think of the game? Did you catch most of it or all of it?
So I, being the true rugby hipster, I watched Italy versus Romania on the other side, which is also being shown by Amazon.
No surprise.
We'll be talking about that later. Anybody wondering when we're going to talk about France versus Fiji, we're going to be talking about that as well in depth later, so stick around. I don't know. I've got a bit of a theory about England's mentality at the moment. I feel like against a Wales away from home or something, they're expected to win, and that's a specific kind of pressure. I think when they go to Ireland, and I think it was the same in the World Cup, you're going away to the #1 ranked team in the world. So I think they're thinking, all we have to do is not get beat by a stupid margin. So I think if they get beat by like 15, they're like, it's not so bad. You know, people might have been thinking it was going to be worse. I genuinely think that's how they were thinking in the World Cup, in the Six Nations, after they got 50 off France at home and they were going to Ireland and everyone was saying, oh my God. I genuinely think they went with a mentality of just keep the score down, just keep the score down. And when you hear the players get interviewed, whether it's Jamie George or Courtney Lawes or whoever, Ben Earl himself, they've started adopting this poor us mentality when they give, people just don't like us because we're England, or we're the underdogs. You know, England don't talk like that. England never have talked like that. I'm proud of the lads. You know, we lost, but it was a brave performance. You know, I think I saw it. It was Alex. I want to say Alex Mitchell. I might have got his name wrong. Did an article in the Times saying England are praising themselves for doing the bare minimum in rugby games at the moment. So I think from my point of view, you know, Wales beat England once, lost to England once, but I think we're a good distance clear of where England are at the moment.
Yeah. And Brian Moore touched on it in a piece this week as well. I think he could be right. England may not get out of their group. It's a plausible scenario for me. I think Argentina are favourites in that game.
I completely agree. I think Argentina are clear favourites. Brian Moore's piece in the Telegraph, I don't want to make a habit of praising the Telegraph, but Brian Moore's piece in the Telegraph was excellent as well. Really well thought out. All the things that I thought about England, he managed to articulate it better than I could in my own head. So shout out Brian Moore.
I'm sure he's listening.
I'm sure he's listening. Right, last bit of news, mate. Bit of fun news now. Yet more Eddie Jones news. So Australia's, I believe, attack coach quit last week. Just
for personal reasons.
Personal reasons. Okay. It's not a good look when Eddie Jones went through assistant coaches like chewing gum when he was at England. But they've brought in enable replacements. Big Steve Hansen, Big Shag, as we turned out that he is called in New Zealand, is now an assistant coach to Eddie Jones. What did you make of that, mate?
Pretty surprised, especially this close to the World Cup. I did not see this one coming. I wonder, is this part of his master plan? Like, was he always on his list? Did he only become available or something? Was he tied up doing something else? Or is this all because of his other coach leaving the setup on the eve of the World Cup? I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it's... Look, we'll only the results will tell, but I don't think it's going to make an enormous difference in terms of performance. I mean, it is the Eddie show. You know, he likes to be the one in charge. And I can't wait till some more revelations come out about what's going on behind the scenes and in all, you know, with all these teams that he's in charge of. Like, why are all the staff leaving? Attack coaches, physios, all that kind of stuff. Like, why is it? I can't wait to read those stories. But yeah, I don't like it's an interesting one. It certainly caught the headline, but for me, it's not going to make a huge difference. I could be proven completely wrong, but I think based on Australia's performance to date since he took over, he's not going to have much of a difference. What do you think?
You know, apparently Eddie and Steve are friends. I can't picture that in my head somehow, but apparently they are, and apparently Steve Hansen's doing it for free, and it's a part-time advisory role, is what I've read. I don't know what his advice is going to be. He's going to go into the changing room and go, "Listen, boys, score more points than them, and we'll win the game." Okay. I think based on the amount of time that he's in the camp, that's about as much as he can contribute, to be honest. I went to the Barbars versus World 15 game and he was on the pitch and there was a moment like, oh my God, that's Steve Hansen. You know, I guess he's got World Cup winning experience, both as a head coach in 2015 with arguably the best side rugby union has ever seen, and also was an assistant to Graham Henry in 2011 as well. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I just wonder how much real impact it's going to be.
Yeah, it's the timing, isn't it? He's not going to have enough time, in my opinion, to have a significant impact.
I'm like you. I can't wait for the stories to come out about this Eddie Jones Australia period. I reckon it's going to be like Wild West stuff.
Yeah, there are some rumors. We won't get into them, but circulating. But I'm sure. Yeah, just can't wait. Buddies to read them. But yeah, he's such an entertainer. That clip of him asking journalists to give themselves an uppercut was just like, I was actually a little bit like, is he all right? And genuinely, but we all know it's just an act. And he's probably fed up as well. Like the media are harsh, which
I can't imagine
perfectly entitled to be.
Wales job. In the Wales job, he'd last about a week. It would be an incredible week, but he'd last about a week because you get journalists like Andy Howell and people from Wales online just going to him, just like,
what are you trying to be a smart ass, mate? Yeah.
Yeah, like in Wales, if we win, we get criticised. So anyway, let's move on, mate. That's enough Eddie Jones chat. So where are we going next? So it's going to be tier 2 chat in a bit, but first we're going to do our weekly deep dive. So for our new listeners, this is our weekly section where we jump head first into a potentially murky rugby topic, something that you might not know much about, and we hope to enlighten you. So Enda, you're going to enlighten us this week, and it's going to be all about how to watch the French top 14.
Yeah, look, it's not, maybe especially for our new Fiji listeners, you guys can skip through this section probably.
A lot of Fijians in the top 14, right? A lot of Fijians in the top 14.
But yeah, it's just a topic. It's a reason why I started my Twitter account, was just to make it easier for people to watch more rugby. And like the top 14 started this past weekend, and there wasn't much chat about it, I didn't think. Obviously with the World Cup, I mean that's understandable, but I just want to make people aware that it's back and that we can watch it, because for years in Ireland and the UK we couldn't watch the top 14 legally, and now we can. And despite everything that's going on with Viaplay, they still have the rights. They're still showing the games. It looks like they're going to go ahead and show the games to the URC this upcoming season. So that's a good news story. So let's talk about their coverage, how many games they're going to do, how you can watch it, how much it's going to cost. Because if you do like your ruggers and you want to watch the top 14, I think it is a good service. And same in Ireland with Premier Sports. So let's just kind of get into it. We can talk about the broadcasters, live v deferred. So basically, like this weekend's a perfect example. We've got 4 games coming up on Viaplay, and with Viaplay, so basically, let's start from start. Sorry. So Viaplay have the rights in the UK for up to 4 games per weekend. In Ireland, Premier Sports have the same rights, up to 4 games, but in general, Premier Sports tends to show maybe 1, 2. The odd time 3 or 4 games, but they don't tend to show all 4 games per weekend. And the main reason for that is because they have the rights to the Premier League 3 p.m. kickoff. So they broadcast those games in Ireland. So they don't have that same availability on their linear channels. And Premier Sports also don't have their own dedicated streaming service. They stream their games via Now. So with Viaplay, so yeah, this weekend's a good example of that. So Viaplay have 4 games coming up, and we'll touch on the actual games later on in the show. So all 4 of those games are going to be on their linear channels plus streaming at the same time on the app, which is great in terms of availability. But then in contrast to Ireland this weekend, Premier Sports are showing 0 games live. The 4 games that they do have the rights to will all be shown at deferred times, unfortunately, for fans in Ireland. So that's kind of just a quick overview of where we are. But just, how do we get here? That's the interesting thing. So this story kind of broke only in July, actually. It was somebody who pointed it out, and it did go kind of viral, I think. So, and every source that I looked up as well kind of verified it. So basically, when Viaplay and Premier Sports, it was actually Premier Sports at the time. This was pre the Viaplay takeover for the UK side of the business. You know, that broadcast agreement was for 2 years. So it was due to expire, the top 14 rights, you know, this past summer. And it turns out it didn't. And Viaplay and Premier Sports haven't come out with a press statement. They haven't made a press release. They haven't really said anything about it. They've just started showing the season again, which I think is a bit mad. But yeah, so this story broke. I remember seeing it on Twitter. It went viral that, you know, both broadcasters were not going to show it. But then I actually got in touch with both of them, and it turns out they are. And so they are going to broadcast it for the upcoming season. So we don't know. When I asked them how long the deal is going to be, it was at least 1 more year. So that's all we know in terms of length. Now, again, when I was told that by my source, that was in July. And then obviously since then, Viaplay have indicated that they are going to leave the UK market. So it's all up in the air. But look, where we are now is that for now, you're going to get up to 4 games per weekend on Viaplay, either via their app, on their linear channels, or both, or you might be able to catch some games deferred. In Ireland, you'll get the same in terms of the games, but you'll probably get less games live. No games will be exclusive on the app because they don't have one. Their games will be shown live on the linear channels. Also, interestingly, so I don't know if you remember, Hugh, I think you were quite rightly frustrated at this, and so were a lot of fans of the top 14. Do you remember the final last season? Viaplay made the decision not to broadcast it live on their linear channels. They have 3 linear channels, and they did not broadcast the biggest game in the top 14 season on their linear channel. They did stream it.
The quarters and the semis and the access game, which is the relegation playoff, but they didn't broadcast the final on their linear channels, as you said. On
the linear channels, which is frustrating because a lot of people, you know, have Sky or Virgin Media, and they watch linear channels all the time. They don't use the app. They might even have the app because the app isn't as readily available as linear channels. But anyway, they did show it on their app, but they didn't show it on their linear channel. But then the news emerged, and I hadn't really heard of it, to be honest, was this French, free-to-air broadcaster, TV5 Monde, whose service is actually available in Ireland and in the UK to stream online for free. So again, they don't really have a linear presence here, but the good news, I think, that broke from this, and I did get confirmation that this coverage is going to continue into this season, is that the game was made available for free, and I think they even had English commentary, which is brilliant. So so TV5 Monde, they have an app, it's free, and so for the upcoming season, they are going to show games from round 24 on, they said, but they said they won't have confirmation of the actual games until May next year. But again, it's more free to air rugby, so it's going to include some regular round games, some knockout games, and the final, all for free, which I think is brilliant. Last season Premier Sports thankfully did show the top 14 final for free in Ireland. We don't have confirmation if that's going to be the case this season, but I'm sure it will. More to follow on that. Then I guess just moving on to highlights. I think, again, people love highlights. They talk about it all the time, but you know, there are highlights on both Premier Sports and Viaplay every week, on Mondays. So now it isn't really a magazine show. There isn't much discussion. It is kind of just highlights of the actual games. There's no interview panel. No, but again, it's a replay of all the games with English commentary. So it is still a good product, and it's on both services. So I think that's, you know, something that people should know. But obviously you can catch your highlights on YouTube as well.
Yeah, so the English commentary, I just want to say, is possibly my favorite English language commentary. Because of watching various obscure rugby games, I catch a lot of different commentary in different languages. I don't speak them, but you get the gist. But the English language commentary for the top 14, at least on Viaplay, is excellent. So the lead commentator, I forget his name again. I'll make sure that I mention it in the comments in the description.
Johnny Beattie's one of them. He is
Johnny Beattie.
He's co-coms. He is brilliant.
Co-coms. So Johnny Beattie is obviously an ex-Scotland international who moved to play in France and has stayed there and currently still lives in the south of France, I believe. The commentator is bilingual as well. So he'll translate everything that the ref is saying for you. And when the players do interviews at halftime or the end of the game, he sits around and he translates that for you in real time as well. It's like, it's really excellent coverage. And the best parts are when the games start getting exciting. Like for me, one of the reasons why I think people should watch the Top 14 is you get these incredible moments with star players. So watching Roman Intermac run in from his own half in the final last year for Toulouse, score the try to win the game, was one of my top rugby moments of the last 2 or 3 years. It was like out of your seat kind of moment. Like, oh my God, I'm watching it. Someone who I truly believe will be a historic rugby player do something historic. And the commentator, he's doing it in English, and he just goes into French. He's like, "C'est incroyable, c'est super," like as he's commentating on Roman Insumat doing this amazing thing. So yeah, hell of a broadcast that they do, the ones that they do broadcast.
Exactly. And that's a great shout. And yeah, Johnny Beattie is, yeah, you can just tell he's a former player as well. He's excellent, and it's hilarious as well watching games, and he sees a big hit and he always reacts. Emojis always raw. So he really bites into it. But that's what you want to see as well. And you can tell he knows almost every single player, every single team inside out, which is what you want, especially, you know, as fans in Ireland and the UK who aren't as familiar with the Top 14 or the players as he is. So that he definitely improves the product, because also the commentators usually they're never actually in the stadium, and you can tell that they are commentating from not from live within the stadium. So sometimes the atmosphere mightn't be as palpable and quite as just noticeable. But the lads thankfully do make up for that. So just looking at kind of the upcoming season now, frustratingly, and yet another reason why I started my Twitter account, all the major competitions now. So you got URC, you got the Galar Premiership, you got the Top 14. In their domestic markets, they've all set their like with the URC especially, they have every single broadcaster of every single game named for the entire season, which I think is incredibly impressive. Top 14 is not the same, but basically they've got, I think it's about quarter of the, maybe even up to half, between a quarter and a half of the season. They do have their, actually no, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Canal Plus in France shows every single Top 14 game. So if you're living in France, you know exactly how to watch. You just need to get Canal Plus. You're going to be able to watch every game. Unfortunately, in Ireland and in the UK, Viaplay and Premier Sports do not release what games they're going to show for the entire season. They literally choose, they choose the week of the games. And even more frustratingly, it'll say on Viaplay.com or on PremierSportsIreland.com, it'll say we're going to show this game on Friday. And then 2 days later, the game isn't even being broadcast, or the game was going to be showed on Viaplay Sports 1. Now it's just going to be available on the app. So that can be quite frustrating. But again, it's not a kind of good reason to keep an eye out, to sign up for our Substack, to keep an eye on my page on Twitter and on the Pirate Rugby Pod for those schedules, because they're impossible to predict. So yeah, you have to find out on a weekly basis. But that's where we step in. Thankfully,
there was some last minute drama
this
weekend, wasn't there, with Viaplay? With they put out what they were going to broadcast, and then it changed last minute, didn't it?
It did indeed, yeah. Then I did hear from a French journalist that the reason they had to move one of the kickoff games, that's the main reason they did that.
Right.
But disappointingly, like this past weekend, there was only one game on Premier Sports in Ireland. And as things stand, it looks like, as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to get any games live, which is frustrating. But look, we won't complain. We still have some coverage throughout the season, so that's what we want. So I just want to then just touch on, because again, we're trying to make rugby more accessible. We want to tell people exactly how you can watch it and how you can watch more and how you can watch the Top 14. So, in terms of how much we'll start off with Viaplay, like how much does it cost? So they actually have a couple of different options, which is good. And interestingly, despite everything that's gone on in terms of them pulling out of the UK market, you can still sign up for a 12-month contract where you get and again, all of these prices are correct at time of recording. So that's Wednesday, the 23rd of August. So you can buy a 12-month contract at just $9.99 a month, which I think is very good. And again, you're going to get that top 14 coverage, and you're also obviously going to get the URC. So I think that's really good. But they also have a rolling plan, which is just $14.99 a month. What else do they have? You can also sign up directly through Sky. You can sign up directly through Virgin Media. You can actually also sign up through Prime Video channels, which I think is very good. So that's what you're looking at in terms of cost.
Yeah,
And
so
then in
I have
terms
the
of
app. Sorry, mate. Just to say,
Yeah,
so I
fire
have
away.
the app. So I think, obviously everyone's got different amounts of money, but I think if you compare the cost of Viaplay to Sky or BT, it's obviously extremely good. It's like a third of the price of those guys. And like you said, the URC stuff, you get every single game for free. So if we've got any South African listeners as well, and you're moving to the UK, that's the thing to get. And then what I do is I Chromecast. So I've got a little Chromecast device that plugs into the back of my TV, and I can connect my phone to that, and it casts the app onto the TV. So that's my little life hack for anybody who can only get the app and can't get it on their TV linear channels. I cast it, and I would recommend that. It is a really great way to consume rugby.
Yeah, I just touched on that, Hugh, and we'll put this in our Substack this week as well. Like, yeah, as you're saying, we can Chromecast, Apple TV, Android TV, Google TV. Like, there's a list there of devices where you can get it. It's also on Roku, LG, a number of different devices. So we'll put that in our Substack this week as well. And then in terms of their linear channels, all 3 channels are available on Sky. However, Sky did recently launch new products like Sky Glass, their TV. They also launched a streaming box called Sky Stream. Unfortunately, those linear channels are actually not yet available on those devices. So just a heads up for any Sky customers or any Sky customers who are thinking of upgrading to those devices and do like Top 14. However, there is a workaround because you can still access obviously Amazon, and as I did mention previously, you can get their content. You can get Viaplay's channels through Amazon directly, and obviously you could just plug in the HDMI and cast, as we said. It's all the linear channels are also available on Virgin Media and Prime Video, as I just said. And the app through all those devices as well, which we'll put in our Substack. Third shout out, probably our 5th shout out for the Substack in this week's.
The Substack is
recording.
great, guys. Sign up to it, please.
And then moving on to Ireland, it's a little bit. Is it more straightforward? Maybe not, but there are a couple of different options. Most of you are probably familiar, but just to quickly run through it. As I said earlier, Premier Sports does not have a streaming app in Ireland. Sky are basically responsible for distributing all of Premier Sports content. So if you want to just stream and you want to be on a rolling contract, the easiest way to do it is to sign up through nowtv.com, which is recently, it's now called Now. I don't know why they changed the name, but they did. And it's $33.99 a month. But bearing in mind, you do get the obviously Top 14. You obviously do get the URC with that, and that includes your TNT Sports. So you're also getting the Gallagher Premiership, you're getting the Heineken Champions Cup, you're getting the Challenge Cups, you're getting all that for virtually 34 quid a month on a rolling contract. And I think there's, I don't know if you've seen this a lot, Hugh. There's been an awful lot of chat at the moment around the amount of piracy that's going on because of obviously how expensive
we wouldn't know
it
anything
is
about
to watch
that.
sports in terms of how expensive it is to watch, your Sky Sports, your TNT, blah, 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 legally. Now, one thing I will say is customers, I think, also need to be very savvy about when they're signing up to something. So, like if you go on to nowtv.com right now and you sign up for the Sports Extra package, which is where you get Premier Sports, you won't pay 34 quid. You probably pay half that, or I think the current offer is $16.99 for maybe 3 or 4 months. So I think people need to kind of bear that in mind as well. Like I think a lot of people might think, look, Top 14s on that sports package, it's 34 quid. It's way too expensive, but the offers are always out there. And with these sports packages, they all tend to usually be on 31-day rolling contracts. So sign up and then cancel as soon as your offer ends, and then sign up again. So that's one place it's available. And probably, for the younger viewers who probably mainly watch content on Now, that's a great way of getting them. But you can also get it through your traditional means like Sky. You can get the Sports Extra package added on for 34 quid. It's also available on Virgin Media for 34 quid, and it's also available with Vodafone for an additional €40 a month. Now, again, all of those prices I listed are the full price. You will get cheaper prices if you're signing up for the first time, or if you're smart with if you do change your providers every year or every couple of months or whatever it is. But I think it's kind of once you, with all this piracy chat going on, I think people need to always just bear in mind as well, you can get the existing packages, which are expensive at full price, at a cheaper rate. And if you're just smart about it and you set reminders about when your offers are ending and stuff, do that and you can enjoy content.
So Sky in the UK have done the thing where if you threaten to leave, they'll drop your price. Because if you say I'm leaving because it's too expensive, they'll say, okay, you can have it for less for a limited time. Yeah. But that has happened to me in the past. Yeah, so that's just something you could do. By the way, if people want to know about why everything we're talking about here is on behind a paywall channels and not on free to air, head over to episode 2 of our podcast in our YouTube, where Enda takes us through why sports, and particularly rugby, basically has to be on paywall TV. So check that out if you want to learn a bit more about that.
Okay, cheers to you. And that's pretty much it for my deep dive on how to watch the top 14. We will get into, obviously, at the end of the show, the games that are coming up on both providers this coming weekend. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that and find that useful. And yeah, that's it for the deep dive this week. Yeah, what are we moving on to? Tier 2 roundup, is it?
Tier 2 roundup, here we go. Right, there was loads of Tier 2 rugby this week, so there's plenty to get through. We're going to start off, as promised, with France versus Fiji. So, speaking of broadcasting rights, it blows my mind. Fiji, the 9th ranked team in the world. This was the first time this year that people in the UK and Ireland could watch them legally in a game, and it was away to France. So that's kind of shows the kind of mire that Tier 2 rugby is in from a broadcast point of view. And it's going to be the same with Romania when we talk about them in a minute. Georgia, we haven't been able to watch legally at all in 2023 so far. Anyway, moving on. So France versus Fiji, mate. So hell of a game. France put out a bit of a changed side. It was our first opportunity to see where Fiji were based off what was quite an easy Pacific Nations Cup for them, as we covered in our last pod, episode 3, where we did our Fiji deep dive. This was kind of the first proper test. Now, like I say, it was a France side, but I will say that France, I thought, played exceptionally well in this game. And they treated Fiji with a ton of respect. So I think in the first 10 minutes, France opted for the post 3 times and kicked them. Their fullback had a great day off the tee and kicked them. And I think that clearly France had taken that on as a sort of a clear tactic into the game of like, we're not here to chuck it about, guys. We're here to win this game. And they did exactly that. So it finished 3 tries to 2 to France. It finished 34-17. But I really don't think that was a reflection of the game at all, personally. Fiji never quit in this game. Fiji were in it the whole time, and they got quite close in the third quarter of the game. They managed to close the gap a bit. One of France's tries was an intercept, which are always a killer. I always say an intercept try, they happen, and sometimes it's okay, it might be an individual's mistake, but you can't really. You'd say that if the game was played again, obviously you'd expect that not to happen. So the scoreline, I don't think, reflected the game. I thought Fiji were really good value. Caleb Muntz, who's their new 10, looks to the manner born with Test match rugby. He looks like a real class act. He's going to be Fiji's 10 for a long time, I think. Playing obviously with the Drua. One thing about Muntz, though, I will say, though, was he doesn't really kick out of hand very much. So almost all of the kicking that Fiji did was off 9, and it wasn't really contestable kicks. He was kicking it quite long. I don't know whether that was on purpose or maybe he just wasn't executing it quite right. It was Lamani who was at 9. So I'd say that's probably the gap that Fiji kind of had to France. One thing that Fiji did do, though, was they made 332 post-contact meters. They had one particular carry, I think it was quite early on in the second half, where it was one of the wingers took it up midfield, took contact, and just kept going and got about 20 meters. Think Stephen Ferris on Will Genia, that kind of a situation. So what did you make of it, mate? I've given my spiel there.
Yeah, look, it just kind of reinforced the progress they've made, and I know our deep dive, you definitely touched on that, and seeing that cohesion because of the Drua. like to me, it just reinforces that good news story. And I think Fiji are definitely going in the right direction. Looking at their pool as well, it's, they got Australia, Wales, Georgia, Portugal. It's not inconceivable that they make it out. It really, really isn't. And I think that's what's exciting. And after that performance against France, like I remember on a previous pod on a different podcast, I had Wales and Australia to go through, but after that performance, I really think they can do it. My only big concern, which is always a concern, I think, with Fiji, is their set piece, and that's where they can be really put under pressure. But looking at that group, like it's definitely on, it's definitely possible, and I think that's a good thing. That's a good news rugby story. That we've talked a lot today about some of the horrific sides of rugby and the consequences of it. But I think the Fiji, the Drua story, all that's a good story. And yeah, but look, they looked good, and they definitely look competitive. They look like they're in much better position than the other Pacific Island nations. So roll on the World Cup, I say.
Yep, here. So next tier 2 game. So this one was on Amazon as well. So it was Italy versus Romania. So this clashed with
the Irish game,
Ireland versus England, frustratingly. So being the noble person that I am, I watched the Romania-Italy game. And first thing I'll say was that the broadcast on Amazon was excellent. It was so refreshing. Sometimes I find tier 1 tests, particularly between, if it's all Six Nation teams or if it's all Rugby Championship teams, it can feel like a bit hard work at times because it's all so like intense and it's all everyone knows each other so well and it's the same thing over and over. Whereas this felt like something really fresh, and the two comms, it was two female commentators. I thought they were absolutely outstanding. I'm thrilled that the lead comm has been picked up by ITV now as well, and she's going to be leading some of the broadcasts in the World Cup in the UK broadcast. So I'm delighted about that. Kat Merchant as well. If anyone's thinking, where have I heard the name Kat Merchant? If you go on Twitter and you see a woman who's absolutely hench and looks like she could fold you in half and post you through a letterbox, that's her, right? And she was on co-coms and she was fantastic as well. So the game unfortunately wasn't a contest. It was 57-7 to Italy, and this follows up Romania's 56-6 defeat to Georgia the week before. See who they got this week. They've got, they're not playing a game this week, probably for the best because they would have probably lost 58-8. So yeah, unfortunately not a close game. A stat that I picked up over the weekend, Romania are on their something like 10th halfback pairing in 11 games. How do you even do that? That's incredible. So yeah, unfortunately, I got to fear for them a little bit going into the World Cup. But for Italy, it was a confidence builder. Paolo Adogwu, formerly of Wasps, was in a couple of England training camps, scored his first try for Italy. Fantastic, huge smile on his face, delighted for the guy. After his disappointing experience with England, I'm thrilled to see him. He's now signed for Benetton, so we're going to be seeing plenty of him in the URC, which is good.
And he's named the World Cup squad as well for Italy. Yeah. So brilliant news story.
URC taking more players out of the English Premiership is always a good thing. So yeah. Oh, and final highlight of that game, the commentator referred to Ange Capuzzo. Am I saying that right? The Italian fullback, Capuozzo.
Let's say you were. Capuozzo, that's the one, yeah.
Yeah. Referred to him as a blockbuster pixie during the game. Here he goes, the blockbuster pixie. And only people who watch that game will know that, apart from you now, because I told you. Anyway, but he was running past people for fun. It was his first game back after he had a pretty horrible injury. And he just, I think he made something like 300 meters in the game on his own. Like, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. So that was that one. Samoa v Barbarians. This game was briefly on YouTube until Stan Sport stuck a copyright claim on it. It was pretty scratch Barbarians side. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would a Barbarians game not be broadcast properly? Like, why would the Barbarians not put it out on their YouTube channel or something? What's the point of the Barbarians?
Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's for me, it's probably cost. But It's
Yeah, probably.
especially like, I know it's a discussion for another day, but like the fact that World Rugby didn't broadcast the tier 2 games this year, like was it even the Pacific Nations Cup? Like it wasn't broadcast, like, but it has to be a cost thing. It's the only explanation. Like I'm sure they would
yeah,
like,
but if you
and
look at
maybe they're still suffering from like from COVID. So I don't know. Like it's like you have like it's frustrating.
so Tonga versus Canada wasn't broadcast in the midweek game because apparently there isn't the infrastructure in Tonga to broadcast games. That's shameful. Someone at World Rugby needs to sort that out. Anyway, so the game, Samoa won 28-14. The interesting point for Samoa's point of view is it was Lima Sopoanga's debut for Samoa. So he and Christian Liliafano are the 2 10s for Samoa going into the World Cup. Obviously, Sopoanga, former All Black, Liafano, former Wallaby. That is huge for them. That is a complete game changer for Samoa. And that is going to start winning them games just by itself, having those 2 in their team, I reckon. Okay, last 2. Sorry, go on, mate.
No, I was just going to say who else played. Yeah, I think it was Uruguay, Argentina was the other one we're going to touch, right?
Yeah,
Uruguay, not Argentina's first team, obviously. I think it was their second string side. I think they called it Argentina 15.
Argentina 15, sometimes known as Argentina B. I think we're going to have to do a deep dive on Argentina 15 at some point, mate, because they don't lose many games and they play a lot. But anyway, Uruguay were the first team that Argentina 15 played and didn't beat. So that's something in itself. Argentina 15 beat Chile, beat Namibia, beat a bunch of other sides in the last few years. But Uruguay beat them quite comfortably, 33-13. I think it was something like 5 or 6 tries to 1. So that's great. Uruguay are exciting. Uruguay are going to be the next Georgia, I think, in terms of being a real presence on the rugby landscape. And they're not sitting on their laurels. They've got ambitions to go places. So that's good. And then finally, last one was Georgia versus USA. How bad is USA's kit? It looks like pajamas. That's Castor for you. But anyway, moving on. It wasn't a thriller. There's a couple of guys on Twitter who we follow. If you follow us on Twitter, we share their stuff all the time. So keep your eye out. Apparently, it wasn't a thriller of a game. It was 22-7. Apparently, Georgia didn't play particularly well, but fullback Nini Ashvili scored a very nice try. So that's good. USA themselves also scored a nice backs move off a line out, went wide and then cut back in. It was a really nice flowing move. But I think the only thing I want to say is anybody going into the World Cup and thinking Georgia, what's the stereotype about Georgia? Scrums. They're a scrumming team. Georgia do not play 10-man rugby. Okay. The Ospreys in Wales, they play 10-man rugby. Georgia play an all-court game. They kick, their backs run, they've got gas. They're coming on leaps and bounds. And if you watch what their under-20s team did in the summer, in the under-20s championship, pushed the All Blacks in the 6th place playoff, 5th or 6th place playoff. Georgia are getting better all the time. So they're going into the World Cup full of confidence after a good summer, and they got Scotland this weekend. So a fellow tier 2 rival. Okay, mate. So yeah, so the ProD2 was back. So this wasn't broadcast anywhere, was it? Or was it?
No, it wasn't. It used to be broadcast on Eurosport, but unfortunately, it's been hasn't been renewed. So we have no legal way of watching the ProD2, which is a shame. And I know we're going to touch on it now because of the amount of talent that's simply playing in that league. But yeah, no legal way to watch it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I kept an eye on it because there's been a bit of an exodus in Wales of players. So like top tier international players in Wales are now playing in the ProD2 because there's no contracts in Wales. So that's kind of mental. So stealing an idea completely from Jared Wright, who does SAFs abroad, I'm now doing TAFs abroad. So if anybody doesn't know, a TAF is a colloquialism for someone who's from Wales. And we're going to start off the first installment of TAFs abroad talking about Rhys Webb and Tyler Morgan playing for Biarritz in the first game of the ProD2 this season. So Biarritz won. All the people who tell you, oh, the ProD2 is mad, and you think, oh yeah, no, it really is. Jump on YouTube and watch the highlights of this game. It was mental. There was a guy sent off for swinging an elbow. The live text said that Reece Webb scored a try in the first minute and then converted it himself. Unfortunately, not quite true, but it was. Everyone got on Twitter, got excited about it when it was reported.
I genuinely thought that was true until about 3-4 seconds ago. What? He didn't? Was this just a lie?
Flash Score, who I used to catch all the scores, said he converted his own try. He did not. If you watch the highlights, sad times, because I got Squidge Rugby involved in it and everything. But yeah, so yeah. The other thing that happened to Reece Webb is he had his standing foot completely taken out by a 12 on the floor. It was a horror tackle. Like, I don't know if he's corrupt now, but he was doing a box kick and the 12 crawls on the floor like a leopard and just goes bang, takes his standing foot, a la what people said they were going to do for Glasgow against Munster. We don't talk about that. So that was a shocker. Referee gave nothing. Referee says play on. Jouet. But yeah, so Reece Webb scored a try. Tyler Morgan, formerly of Dragons, Wales and Scarlets, also scored a try. A really nice one, cutting back against the grain off a line-out, beat about 4 players. Great footwork, great pace. But yeah, mental game. There's a highlight edit on YouTube of this that will give you a headache. I'm not going to give away too much, but some of it, but not all of it, is in double speed. So that's nice. Who else? Who are the other TAFs abroad? Sam Davis made his debut for Grenoble. So former Wales, Ospreys and Dragons fly half. He basically kicked the team to victory off the tee. Grenoble won despite, so red cards don't ruin games, Enda. They were down to 14 men for a croc roll. So in France, you can get red carded for a croc roll now. So that happened.
That was horrific.
Ross Moriarty, captain's Brive. Irish guy for you. Brive. Anyway, he made his first game for that team and he captained them. They lost, I believe. It was a big game. They were playing Agen. Yeah, which is a big game. I think those two will be some of the favourites to go up. To go with the other teams, players who play for that, Sam Johnson, formerly Scotland centre, plays for them, as does Stuart Olding. He didn't play in this game, Ulster, but he plays over there in France as well now. And then finally, one other, it's not a TAF, but I got to mention it. Jimmy Gopperth is signed for Provence. So he's about 40.
Is he literally 40 years old?
He is literally 40 this year.
Legend. Brilliant player.
Earn the money, mate. Earn the money. Right, and then not ProD2, but Will Griff-John made his debut for Racing 92 in a move that only his agent thinks makes sense. Like, a guy could not get a game for the Scarlets, but is now playing for Racing 92. And then Alan Jones made his debut for Toulon, got yellow carded. Speaking to Rugby Toulon on Twitter, no one knows why. He got a yellow card. No one knows why. But apparently they were showing his image in the stands on the big screen and everyone cheered. So that was nice. And then, again, not a Welshman, but Sione Cameron Lafoni, formerly of the Scarlets, has signed for Vaughan in the ProD2. Or has he? More on that later, because apparently not all is well. So anyway, keep up to date on that. You can catch, if you subscribe to the ProD2 on YouTube, there's the highlights for all the games in French, but you can get the gist of it. And they also do a Tries of the Week package as well. So that Tyler Morgan try I talked about is in there and things as well. And we'll share that on the Pirate Rugby Twitter every week as ProD2 Tries of the Week. So yeah, so that was it, mate. So moving on then to very quickly touch on the top 14, which we talked about in your deep dive. So what were the televised games and what were the results in those then this week, mate?
So I think the Friday night game was Bayonne, who played Toulouse, and they won actually. Some atmosphere as well. I don't know if you've seen some of the clips. I think they've one of the best. I think they sold it out. They've one of the best group of sports, I think, in the top 14. Bayonne do so, and that was a great result for them. Good start to the season. Racing also had a win. I forget who Racing were playing.
Racing beat 2 seconds. Racing beat Bayonne. Oh no, it must have been Bordeaux. Sorry, Bordeaux.
It was Bordeaux. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's
and
right,
then it was. Then the other Saturday game that was broadcast was Lyon v Toulon, which Lyon won. And then the Sunday fixture was Montpellier, who actually beat La Rochelle. And I think La Rochelle have Lyon coming up this weekend, so it'll be interesting to watch. We've all seen that clip of O'Gara doing his best French, with a few curse words thrown in, which is brilliant. I don't know if you see. I'm sure you've seen the clip. It was brilliant.
I've seen,
He is such he's such
say,
like he's
Sorry, we're talking over each other. O'Gara was coaching La Rochelle, and Richard Cockerell was coaching Montpellier. So it was two sets of facial expressions that they kept cutting to, because in France they're allowed on the touchline. So obviously in the UK everyone's up in the coaches box and things. On France,
NFL-esque
touchline. So yeah, what are you going to say?
No, that's right. Just he's such a phenomenal. Everyone knows he is, but he is it's worth reiterating how much of he's a brilliant character, brilliant coach. The sad thing is as well, I think from an Irish perspective, especially from a Munster perspective, is that he's not probably ever going to coach Munster. He's, like, if he ever does come back to Ireland, it's going to be for the top gig, which is disappointing from a Munster perspective. But he is such a legend.
If I was him, I'd coach Connacht, and then I'd win the URC with Connacht just to show everyone how good I was. Anyway, so that was that. One thing I will just say on the top 14, it is the slowest and the lowest scoring of all the major leagues. Like, we love it and we watch it every week and we want everyone else to watch it. Just don't think you're getting Super Rugby except in French. It is like a completely different game. It's very forward dominated. It's very few line breaks, few tries and things. There's a lot of kicking for goal. But that's fine. Some people like that.
Yeah.
I've got someone, I know a guy who plays rugby, and he says that it should be scrums and lineouts, and that's all he wants from rugby. He doesn't want.
And look at the attendances as well. Like, sorry to cut across, but like if you look at the attendance, like when personally, when I watch it, I get a bit frustrated at how slow it is. But look at the crowds that turn up. Like, look at the massive, like the TV league that, like, those broadcast rights dwarf the URC and the Gallagher Premiership rights. So obviously it's a major product, and maybe it's like, we can definitely look at this maybe another day. Like, how come those attendances so high? Is because there is promotion and there is relegation? Is it because they've got the biggest stars? Like, who knows? But it's like, you often say, like, oh, it's like if the product's good for score, if there are loads of line breaks, loads of tries, like that'll get people in. Well, the top 14 kind of goes against that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
If you compare the ProD2 to like the English Championship, it's not. You can't compare. It's a completely different. It's a completely different product.
And the attendance figures are incredible.
Yeah. I've got to go to one. I want to go to a Breathe game. If I can learn how to say it, I'll go. But yeah, anyway, so that was that. So what about NPC then, mate? So there's NPC happening literally all the time, because there's about
3 games, it seems, per week.
Yeah. So what was the results this week then, mate?
Yeah, so the 3 games. Well, I know that Northland beat Tasman, which is that's a big result. Sorry, Northern. Yeah, and then also this morning, I know Wellington were playing. Who were Wellington playing this morning?
Tasman again.
It was Tasman again.
Tasman had 2 games in 5 days.
And did I see was it actually 7-0 to Wellington? Was that the final score?
Yeah. Yes.
We need to double check that. So that sounds like it was a cracker.
It is the bleak midwinter in New Zealand at the moment. So, and the Kiwis do not like playing in the rain. So maybe that's what it was.
So they're the two kind of stands.
Haven't Leinster beat Zebra 3-0 twice?
That could be true, but we need to fact check that.
Now, just don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Anyway.
So in terms of the standings in the NPC, we've got Taranaki now, who are out on top with 4 wins from 4, followed by Hawke's Bay in 2nd, Wellington in 3rd, and Canterbury in 4th. But yeah, 14 teams in that league. So I know we've been going on about how high scoring it is, and then there's a game that ends 7-0. But yeah, let's just blame the weather on that one. Moving on then to the Scottish Super 6.
If you want high scoring, Scottish Super Not 6 Summer Series, because there's 7 of them, that's where you want to go. So it's just non-stop tries. So Future 15, which is the new team, the one that makes it 7 and not 6, they took 90. They took
Wow.
90 points off the wall.
At least it wasn't
So I
100.
don't know what's happening. Yeah, at least it wasn't 100. Take the positives. But yeah, it was tries all over the place. Heriots were defeated by the Bulls. Heriots looked good up until then. Bears beat the Knights. Good team names. And then obviously the other team had a bye week. But now Bulls sit top of the league, but Watsonians are just behind them. So Watsonians had a bye, but they've got a game in hand. Okay, I think that covers all of the Tier 2 rugby, mate, just about. What other bits of Tier 2 rugby news might we just need to touch on before we say goodbye?
I guess one thing we need to chat about is, like, we're all really excited about Springboks v the All Blacks this coming Friday. But England and Fiji, I think England have only sold 40,000 tickets. I believe the top tier of the stadium is going to be completely closed off. That's very disappointing. Like, there are, myriad of reasons as to why that's the case, but a couple of weeks out from World Cup, it's not a good look for England rugby, is it?
No, it's quite crazy that people have been talking about Wales attendances and things in Cardiff, but we've never been as low as 40,000. Like, that's unbelievable, really. And like you say, Springboks versus the All Blacks is in Twickenham the night before. That's a sellout. So
yeah,
you can see why the Ospreys, you can see why the URC are looking at staging games in London. If you can attract that many South African fans to a game in London. Yeah. But yeah, so Fiji versus England's, if Twickenham will look very empty with only 40,000 in it, and it's an 80,000 capacity, I think.
Yeah, and the atmosphere is going to be non-existent.
Yeah, you're barely able to hear them sing "Sweet Swing Low" for no reason. Anyway,
at least we'll hear the players celebrating.
Yeah, when they Fiji knock it on in their own 10-meter line, we'll be able to hear Ben Earl screaming his head off. Anyway, let's not be horrible. Right, last bit of news. So MLR news, Major League Rugby out of USA. Rugby ATL, which was the Atlanta-based franchise, are not going to be in Atlanta moving forward. So they've been taken over by a new ownership group, and they're moving to Los Angeles. Now, for people who don't know the landscape of America, those two places are not near to each other. One's not quite on the East Coast, but to the east, and obviously LA is on the West Coast. So the statement put out by the owners was, as we focus on the well-being of our players, we are happy to announce Los Angeles is the location for the new ownership group of Rugby ATL, said Nick Benson, CEO of MLR. MLR continues to work with Rugby ATL players and staff to provide the best next steps for everyone impacted by this transition. That feels to me, not trying to be horrible again, that feels to me like they're going to lay everybody off and employ new people in LA. I don't know, mate. Am I being pessimistic?
Yeah, hopefully it's not the case. I mean, it's some ask for players and staff to make that move, and MLR players are not making a lot of money. So
no, that was a bit of a myth when people like Ma Nonu and that all signed for New York and things. No, Ma Nonu doesn't play for New York, but anyway. Everyone thought, it must be big bucks then. It's not. It's not.
No. Definitely a conversation for another too. We can definitely touch on the MLR since we can actually watch it here legally. So I think maybe that probably brings us on to our last section. I'm not going to go through the full list of fixtures that are being shown on your TV screens this weekend. I'm just going to go through the highlight, the big highlights. Because again, you'll be able to see these. They'll be out tomorrow. The full guide, but probably the biggest game for me of the weekend is on Friday, which we talked about, which is New Zealand are playing South Africa. Both teams have put out extremely strong starting 15, so that's going to be great. That's at 7:30. What channel is it on? It is on Sky Sports Mix and Sky Showcase. So the good news is, if you do have access to Sky Mix or Sky Showcase, first of all, you don't have to be a Sky Sports subscriber, so that's the biggest thing. So that's good news for people. And the second thing as well is that those two channels are widely available, so they're not exclusive to Sky. So that's a good news story, I think. What else? So we'll have to touch on top 14 fixtures since top 14 was the focus of our deep dive. So there are 4 games coming up this weekend. The first is, four games being broadcast. There are plenty, like the top 14 games. I think there's something like between 6 and 8 games a week around. But anyway, Friday we've got Stade Francais v Oyonnax. That's at 8:05, and that's being shown on Viaplay Sports on their linear channel, plus on one of their linear channels, and on their app. What other top 14 games are on? We got La Rochelle v Lyon at 2:00 on Viaplay, and we also have the 8:05 fixture on Saturday is Toulon v Bayonne, and there's also a Sunday fixture between Toulouse and Montpellier, and that's at 8:05. So yeah, all those games as things stand are on Viaplay's linear channels and on their app. Unfortunately, none of those games are being shown live in Ireland for whatever reason. Other big games that come up this weekend. Do we call England v Fiji? Well, look, we are a tier 2 podcast. Let's call England v Fiji. That's a big game. That's at 3:15 on Saturday. That's on Amazon in the UK and on Premier Sports in Ireland. Other big games, Scotland are playing Georgia at 5:30. Unfortunately, that game does clash with Italy v Japan at the exact same time. All of those games are being shown on Amazon the UK and in Premier Sports in Ireland. Ireland are also playing Samoa on Saturday night, and that's at 8:15, and that's on RT2 and the RT Player, and it's on Amazon in the UK. So they're probably the highlights. Actually, no, cannot forget about Sunday and France beat Australia at 4:45. Again, Amazon in the UK.
Eddie's last chance
Premier
to get
Sports
a win before the World Cup.
In Ireland, yeah, that's going to be a cracking game. So they're just some of the highlights. There are more games on. Again, we'll have the full schedule for you guys tomorrow, along with the kickoffs and everything. But yeah, I think there are 16 games being shown in the UK this weekend, 12 in Ireland. So I think that's definitely a good news story. So I think that pretty much rounds up the upcoming fixtures.
Yeah, so that's our pod, guys. A lot of rugby to get through, but I think we talked about it well. We are passionate about representing everybody on this pod. And going through all of the games and not excluding anybody. So it's good. And tune in next week where we'll tell you about everything that has happened. If you haven't been able to watch any of the games that we just run through, tune in and we'll tell you all about it. So yeah, so cheers, mate. Same again next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the ruggers.